Welcome to the May 15 HealthTech Dose. Today we're unpacking a massive blind spot in pharmaceutical R&D. Everyone is completely obsessed with the AI arms race right now, right? Chasing that raw algorithmic performance. But what if we're aiming at the entirely wrong target? In this explainer, we're going to see why the real strategic advantage, the actual game changer, isn't just a smarter algorithm, but rigorous procedural governance.
So let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat. AI is absolutely revolutionizing our clinical pipelines. The rapid prototyping capabilities are completely off the charts. But if our machine learning models are hitting a jaw-dropping 99% accuracy in the lab, why are they still failing so spectacularly when we drop them into actual clinical trials?
Well, it all comes down to what we call the AUC illusion. It's incredibly tempting to look at that rapid prototyping and think we've totally solved drug development. In a perfectly sanitized lab setting, everything looks flawless. But then we hit clinical reality. There is a massive, massive disconnect when we transition from perfectly curated training datasets into the messy, highly unpredictable reality of actual human patients.
The crux of all this hype, and frankly, all the venture capital investment, usually rests on one specific metric, an AUC, or area under the curve, of 0.99. In retrospective lab tests, developers are seeing this staggering raw algorithmic performance. I mean, a 0.99 basically means the model is almost perfectly categorizing the data it was fed. It's intoxicating, it really is. But here's the catch. That raw predictive power means absolutely nothing without context. Enter a concept known as domain shift. This is the exact reason why your brilliant 0.99 AUC model completely faceplants in the clinic. When you deploy an algorithm trained on clean, highly controlled data into the real world, where patient demographics, underlying conditions, and clinical workflows are all over the map, the model's performance just rapidly degrades.
And that brings us to a really brutal systemic issue, the demographic data blind spot. We're caught in this massive tension. On one hand, strict privacy laws like GDPR absolutely require us to anonymize health data, and that makes sense. Protecting patients is crucial. But the unintended consequence? It completely strips away critical demographic indicators like socioeconomic status, race, and ethnicity. So without that data, how do we audit our AI for bias? We literally can't. It directly contradicts our goal of running inclusive trials.
To give you a sense of just how structurally concentrated and, frankly, non-diverse our global trials data actually is, consider this number, 2.2%. In 2022, Brazil, which is a massive, incredibly diverse nation, accounted for only about 2.2% of global multi-center clinical trials. Our global data is heavily, heavily skewed toward very specific regions. If our AI models train on that fragmented data, they're going to have massive blind spots when treating real, diverse populations.
Now, you might be thinking, wait, technology can fix this, right? What about synthetic data generation? It sounds like the perfect silver bullet. Create mathematically identical datasets to fill in those gaps without violating privacy. But actually, scratch that. Synthetic data simply inherits and often amplifies the structural biases of the original source data. Synthesizing more of a biased dataset doesn't solve the equity problem. It just scales up the bias and gives us a false sense of security. Okay, but algorithmic bias isn't even the only threat to our pipelines. We also have to face something even more terrifying, poisoning the evidence chain. With the rush to adopt generative AI tools to speed up research, what happens if those tools start injecting entirely fabricated data directly into our regulatory submissions? We're talking about LLM hallucinations polluting the very foundation of clinical research.
And if you think that's just some dystopian future scenario, think again. Let's look at a massive audit of 2.5 million biomedical papers. In 2023, you had about 4 fabricated citations per 10,000 papers. Fast forward to early 2026, that number skyrocketed to roughly 57 fabricated citations per 10,000 papers. AI hallucinations are actively polluting the scientific record, and the scale is accelerating fast. It's easy to dismiss this as just an emerging tech growing pain, but it's a direct threat to the pipeline's bottom line. Check out these stats. Between 30 and 69% of LLM-generated biomedical references are entirely fabricated. And worse, they look perfect. They use real researcher names, proper formatting, the whole shebang. Review articles, the ones that actually inform clinical guidelines, have a 57% higher fabrication rate. And the real kicker? At the time of this audit, 98.4% of those affected papers had zero publisher action taken. We need safeguards right now.
So, where does this leave us? Well, the industry absolutely has to stop this obsession with building the perfect black box, chasing raw predictive power and rapid lab results at all costs. Instead, we need to completely shift our focus toward building an auditable process. We need procedural governance that regulators and, more importantly, the clinicians actually using these tools can truly trust. Without trust, your .99 AUC isn't worth the server space it's stored on.
This is where an operational fix, like the V3 framework, comes into play. It takes AI development out of theoretical lab accuracy and grounds it in rigorous, step-by-step clinical reality. Step 1. Verification. Do the sensors and devices actually meet predefined technical specs? Step 2. Analytical validation. Do the algorithms accurately and reproducibly transform those raw signals? And Step 3. Clinical validation. Does the resulting measure actually answer a specific clinical question? This is exactly how you de-risk the pipeline.
To really lock in that procedural trust, we have to integrate the Altai principles for trustworthy AI. Because let's be real, regulators don't just care about how fast your model is. They care about robustness. They want to see generalization across diverse populations and explainable AI. They demand accountability, transparency, reproducibility, fairness, and privacy. Those aren't just corporate buzzwords, they are the literal bedrock for compliance and real-world adoption.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from today's explainer. We have to elevate the AI conversation. It's no longer just a technical IT problem. It is a core portfolio management strategy for R&D leaders. Procedural governance isn't some annoying compliance hurdle you tack on at the end. Right now, it is the ultimate competitive moat for pharmaceutical innovators. So I want to leave you with this to chew on. Take a hard look at your own R&D pipelines. Are you just chasing the AUC illusion, or are you actually building resilient systems of trust? How is your organization building its procedural moat? It's definitely time to critically reevaluate our AI governance strategies. Thanks for hanging out and exploring this with us today on HealthTech Dose, and we'll catch you next time.